Spotlight on Brazil.
This week's edition of Sustainable Cities goes to Brazil. Here's our correspondent, Sergio Nascimento, to tell us about a place that found a different way to meet some of the challenges of modern life way back in the 1970s.
Hello! I've come to somewhere that has collected numerous awards for its innovative approach to urban living, Curitiba.
Many governments are only now putting people back at the heart of city centre planning. Curitiba convinced people to stop relying on their cars several decades ago. How did they do it, Sergio?
Well, it started with an inspired and far-sighted mayor who, with a few colleagues, created what must be one of the fastest pedestrianisation schemes in history. Over the course of a weekend, they blocked off some of the city centre streets and started planting flowers with the help of local children. This overcame the opposition of the shopkeepers, who thought their businesses would suffer. They soon saw the centre could bring in far more customers than they'd had before. Popular support for a more people-friendly city grew from there.
The city itself has grown considerably since those days, I believe.
It supports a population of more than 2.5 million people today, and it shares the problems of many developing urban areas in South America. Immigration from the countryside, the pressure for housing, and so on. Yet, it has found some very original solutions. For example, instead of putting people into anonymous housing projects, it helped them to build their own homes.
Really?
By recognizing that many people already had the skills needed for construction work, it gave them support in the form of materials and advice from architects, and then let them get on with the job. That way, people have a real investment in where they live and really want to look after the place once it's built.
Is it true that the city has one of the most extensive and efficient transport systems anywhere in the world?
Yeah, that's right. There's a whole network of different types of buses that run into and around the city in their own dedicated bus lanes. It's coordinated by the city council, but privately financed. They managed to get transport companies to provide such a comprehensive service by paying them for the number of kilometers they cover, not the number of passengers they carry. There are buses every minute in the rush hour, so the system can carry something like 2 million people. That's more than in New York.
And they connect everywhere to everywhere else.
Neighborhoods, to workplaces, to hospitals, to tourist attractions. Nearly 70% of all journeys are by bus. The whole system pays for itself, and it's been developed largely on the existing streets, without knocking down buildings, so the character of the neighborhoods is maintained.
Have they forgotten about cyclists?
No. There's a network of about 150 kilometers of cycle paths around the city. And parallel to the transport systems, they've developed a network of faróis de saber, or lighthouses of knowledge.
What are they?
They're free educational centres placed around the city, which have libraries, internet access, and other cultural resources. People can get help with job training, social welfare, and access to educational programs. Another thing they're keen on are the tree planting initiatives and the development of green spaces. They even use sheep to keep the grass down. It is much cheaper and it helps regenerate the soil.
And the secret to all this is planning.
It's not only planning, it's involving local people in decision-making from the start. Public participation has ensured that the system has continued, even though the man who started it all is no longer mayor.
Fascinating. Now, tell us about the recycling programme, Sergio.
The Bric Countries. Brazil, Russia, India, China. What is their economic future?
Dawn, Dave, thanks for coming to this meeting to talk about something that I think is very important.
It's good to be here.
No, I agree. These are important issues.
Can you both fill me in on developments in the Bric countries? Dawn, you first?
Here we're talking about Brazil, Russia, India and China. John O'Neill of Goldman Sachs in London recently wrote an influential report on the future of these 4 countries.
What were the key messages of the report?
Well, it's common knowledge that the economies of all 4 countries are developing at incredible speed at the moment.
Yes, Russia has become a major player on the world's energy market.
Yeah.
India's IT companies are now recruiting amongst the best of the West's IT graduates. Chinese industry is quickly moving upwards in the value chain, away from low-value goods to higher-end products such as cars, car parts, electronic and computer components, just as Japan did in the 50s. We're now waiting for Chinese brands to go global, as Fuji, Sony and the like did from Japan.
Brazil is now a major supplier of industrial raw materials to China. China is investing heavily to improve Brazil's transport infrastructure, to facilitate the rapid export of these goods. China is buying increasing amounts of food from Brazil.
Sure. What sorts of things could go wrong?
Well, energy supplies are a problem for China. Chinese energy imports are the main driver behind recent spikes in oil prices. Well, there's an increasing possibility of drought in the north of the country, which could threaten food production. The political situation has been quiet for some time now, in the cities at least, but a downturn in the economy could threaten this. These are just a few of the things that could go wrong.
OK, I see. The situation may change, and these predictions may not be 100% correct.
No, that's correct.
Thanks. One question. Where's Africa in all of this?
Good question, Bob. These predictions are based on what's happening in the world today. African countries have a couple of major problems. Today, in many African countries, rates of HIV infection are very high. Many young Africans who should be in work, helping these economies to develop, are ill and aren't able to contribute. The second problem, more money needs to be spent on improving the education systems of African countries.
Are there any signs of things improving?
Well, some countries such as Uganda have been successful at reducing rates of HIV infection. And did you know oil reserves have been found in Chad recently?
Oh, no, I hadn't heard about that.
Well, oil has been found there. New oil reserves have been found in West Africa too. If these discoveries continue, some African countries may well join Brazil, Russia, India and China.
The Bullets exam.
First certificate, advanced, proficiency, Trinity and IELTS. There is no shortage of English language qualifications on the market at the moment if you need a certificate to impress an employer or enrich your CV. But now there's yet another one, Bullets. Mark Cohen, who is training manager with a large international banking group, has just introduced the Bullets exam as part of the corporate training programme in his organisation. So, Mark, 2 questions to kick off with. First, why another exam? And secondly, why Bullets?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm lucky in that I work for a company who invest a lot in training, and we see language training as an essential part of that. We have offices in over 24 countries worldwide, so obviously our staff use a lot of different languages, not to mention our external clients. We do a lot of language training, and the exams you mention are all fine in their place, but they're not really what we're looking for.
How do you mean?
All they do is show that you have achieved a certain level.
And what are you looking for?
Well, this is where Bullets comes in. What we need to find out is not the language level of the people who work for us, but their ability to speak that language. And it is exactly this that the Bullets exam tests. It not only evaluates their skills, but also lets us look at their suitability for further language training, and helps us to decide exactly what kind of training is necessary.
And you then design language training based directly on their needs?
Exactly. We work with a group of language trainers who design materials and sessions specifically to meet our corporate needs, and also the needs of the people who take the courses, helping to maximise our resources.
So far, so good. But why the necessity for the exam? Why not just do the courses straight away?
Well, we've done language courses before, and they've never achieved quite what we want. We even had an extensive programme of sending trainees to the UK to do language courses. They all had a great time, but to be honest, the results didn't really meet our corporate objectives.
And Bullats helps you to do this?
Yes, I have to say. It's proved pretty successful so far. We've given trainees the Bullats exam at both the beginning and at the end of the language courses they've followed. It allows us to accurately measure their progress and the efficiency of the training they underwent.
How do you manage to fit an exam into busy working schedules?
Bullats has proved very easy to administer. We can do it at any time, unlike the other exams which you mentioned, when they can only take them twice a year, which would mean a lot of delays. Not useful in a fast-moving business like ours.
Is it only for English language training?
No, we don't just use the English language version. As I said before, we work in lots of different countries, so our staff have to be able to speak more than just English. The Bullats test can also be done for French, German and Spanish, all highly useful languages in our corporate environment.
Mark, thanks for your time.
Today, I'm going to talk about business and ethics. First, I'll look at what is meant by business ethics. Then, I'll examine the kind of ethical considerations companies need to address, how they can go about doing business in a more ethical way, and look at some examples of ethical business practices. So, what are business ethics and why are they seen as important in today's business climate? Business ethics relate to how a company conducts its business in order to make a profit. Although the primary goal of the company may be to make money, it also recognizes that it has a responsibility towards the society in which it operates. The term corporate social responsibility is often used, and nowadays many companies have strong corporate social responsibility programs designed to help create a prosperous, inclusive society. Now I'll look at some basic ethical considerations that a company needs to address. The first area is how the company treats its employees. All employees should be treated fairly and with respect. A company that cares for its workers' welfare will tend to have a happier workforce and a lower turnover of staff. It is also important that workers are recruited on a basis of equal opportunity. The second area is how a company conducts its day-to-day business. In a manufacturing business, this includes how suppliers of raw materials are chosen and treated. A good example of this is the fair trade movement. This initiative ensures that small-scale farmers are paid directly and at a fair price for their crops. A company should also look at its policy on paying suppliers and ensure that payments are made on time. Another ethical consideration is the impact the business has on the environment. Manufacturing companies should strive to ensure that production is clean and careful, and look for ways to minimize energy consumption and waste products. Finally, a company can also decide to give something back to the community it operates in. This can be in the form of corporate giving programs, where donations are given to community projects, or by initiating schemes to improve the local community and encouraging employees to work on these schemes.
Welcome to this week's programme. I have with me in the studio Mark Fletcher, a business angel. Mark, can you explain what a business angel is?
Yes, well, it sounds like someone who is altruistic, but in fact, a business angel expects to make a good return on their money. We usually invest in startups and small business looking to expand. When the company does well, we expect our capital back with a substantial return. Sometimes we group together to make a syndicated deal.
How do these investments differ from bank loans?
In my case, I like to lend between £10,000 and £100,000 to a business. I don't charge interest, so I'm taking a risk with my money. But within 5 years, I expect to get a good return on this investment, about 50 or 60%.
How do you get your money back?
The company either raises money by floating on the stock market or is sold. I will have an agreement with the owners as to how much of the money raised goes to me.
How do you find a company to invest in?
I belong to a network of business angels, and business owners contact us to find an investor. Typically, they give a presentation to a group of prospective investors, and if anyone likes what they see, they put money into the business.
How do you decide who to invest in?
Oh, I go very much by gut feeling. Of course, I need to see business plans, but if I think the company is producing something that there's a market for, and if I think the owners have the drive and ambition to do well, then I'll put my money in.
Are all the businesses you invest in successful?
No, of course not. If I invest in 10 companies, I expect 3 or 4 to go bust, 2 or 3 to do okay, and a couple to be really good. Those are the ones I make my money on. Earlier this year, I got back 10 times the amount I'd invested in one company. This makes up for the investments where I make a complete loss.
And once you've invested your money, is that it? Or do you have any further involvement in the company?
I'm very much a hands-on investor. Before I became a business angel, I ran several successful businesses which I then sold on. So I've got plenty of experience, and I like to help companies develop and expand. Sometimes I'll expect to become a director of the company. Other times I concentrate on giving financial advice. The great advantage is that I can see what is happening to my money.
Thanks very much, Mark. Now, if anyone is interested in contacting a business angel, you can find out more on our website.
Business books.
Today I'll be talking to the author and business guru, Jared McCall. Jared has written a number of books on business subjects, and his latest, just out in paperback, is called The One-Armed Monkey, 10 Types of New Product. In this book, Jared looks at the way in which an estimated 90% of new products fail within a year of being launched onto the market, and tries to analyse why so many products do fail, and why that 10% succeed. Jared, if I may ask, why do you think the world needs another business book?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that my book isn't just another business book. It's certainly not a dry, boring textbook, but something which, I hope, even the general reader will find of interest.
You're aiming at the bestseller lists, then?
Of course, any author would be.
So, what is it that makes your book so special?
Well, instead of just analysing statistics and showing graphs, I use case studies, actual stories of products that failed or were successful, and often the story of these products is an entertaining read.
Yes, I agree with you there. There's a strong narrative and you're a good writer.
Thanks.
But, and I'm afraid there's a but here.
There always is.
Even though I found the book an entertaining read, I'm not sure your use of jargon helps.
Jargon?
Yes. I mean the specialised language you use.
Well, I aimed to reach all readers, so I don't actually use that much jargon.
What I'm thinking of is the names you give each of the 10 product types you describe. The one-armed monkey is what you call a product which will fail.
Yes, after the disastrous toy.
And you call a successful product a silver shadow, and so on and so on.
OK, I take your point. But using these terms, these names, isn't really jargon. I'm just trying to find a quick way to describe different types of product. If you use names like this, it helps people to remember and to identify their product ideas and make difficult concepts clearer and easier to understand.
So you want to help product developers make sure their product isn't a one-armed monkey, but a silver shadow.
Exactly. And where my book is different to a lot of other ones on the market now is that it gives practical advice on how to make sure your new product succeeds.
OK, but I found that all these terms were actually making things more difficult to understand.
Well, ultimately, the market will judge if people agree with what I'm saying or find it useful or inspirational. Then they'll buy the book and start to use the terms. Remember that a phrase like long tail, for example, is quite a recent term.
Sure, but to me, long tail describes something which is a real phenomenon. What I'm not sure about is the 10 different product types described in your book and the use of trying to label and name them all.
I think if you look carefully at the stories I tell, the case histories, you'll find that the names are actually quite useful guides as to why the products succeeded or failed.
OK. Jared McCall, thank you very much. And I certainly hope your book proves to be a silver shadow and not a one-armed monkey.
Thank you.
The car industry.
Hello there. I'm talking to Lee Smith, an automobile sector specialist.
Hello.
Lee, I'm not an expert, but it often seems to me that cars now are becoming more standardised.
How do you mean?
Well, basically, if I look at the traffic passing me as I drive to work each morning, well, all the cars look the same.
Yeah. Sure, you're not entirely wrong. Developments in technology and fuel efficiency is a major factor here, mean that in some ways standard design is inevitable.
Companies are all finding the best way to design a car.
Exactly. At least a car that the market wants right now.
But you're here to tell us about an exception.
Yeah. The other factor in this standardisation, as you call it, is that, quite simply, even though there are still a lot of brand names on cars, there are actually very few automobile manufacturers left.
Really?
Yeah. Toyota, General Motors, Ford and Volkswagen have around 50% of the global market.
Oh.
Even classic British names such as Rolls-Royce and Aston Martin are owned by multinationals, BMW and Ford, respectively. But there is at least one British company who remain proudly independent.
And who's that?
They're called Morgan.
And what's so different about them?
Well, they're a historic company, founded as long ago as 1913, and they've always concentrated exclusively on sports cars.
Like, say, Ferrari?
No, because Ferrari are part of Fiat, one of the other major manufacturers.
Oh.
Morgan have never tried to go commercial on a big scale.
Is that viable, though? How can they compete against such giants?
By doing what they do best, and not changing in a changing world.
They're still making the same cars they made in 1913?
Well, no, of course not. But the style of the cars has remained strikingly constant.
They are very unusual looking, aren't they? Especially these new models.
Yeah, the Aeromax and Life cars. They have a design which is both traditional and very modern.
Yeah, they look quite futuristic, actually.
Exactly. And that's only the outside. The Life car, for example...
why is it called Life?
Life stands for lightweight, fuel efficient.
OK, but surely all cars today claim to be light and fuel efficient.
They do, but none of them like this one.
How come?
Well, like all Morgan cars, the frame is made of wood.
Wood?
Yes. Not only is it lightweight, the company claim that it is also safer.
Safer?
Yes.
So why don't more companies make wood frame cars?
One simple reason. It's not cheap.
OK, I see.
Added to that, the Life car uses a fuel cell.
Is that a kind of battery?
Yes, kind of, but it allows for better performance.
Interesting. Why aren't these cars everywhere then?
Well, as I already mentioned, they're not cheap. A basic model will cost you around £30,000, while top-of-the-range models can cost up to £200,000.
Phew.
And that's not all. There's a one-year waiting list for these cars.
Why so long?
They're all entirely hand-built.
Wow.
Yeah. The company have ignored advice from consultants and experts and continue to produce their cars the way they want.
Very brave.
And very successful, apparently.
Would you say then that Morgan is an exception or the way forward?
That's a difficult question to answer. There's no way Ford are going to restructure themselves along those lines.
A year before you can buy a Mondeo.
No way. But for a niche market, Morgan are a company to watch.
Lee, thanks.
Thank you.
Change management.
Hi, Sue. How are things?
Fine, yeah.
OK, now, about the change in your work routine, you're going to work Saturdays from next month.
Yes, but why should I have to work on Saturdays? No one's told me why this is necessary.
I'm sorry, this should have been explained to you. We get a lot of people calling now on Saturdays for information about our products. It's important that we answer these questions. Is that OK? Any more questions?
No. OK.
Great. Well, how's your course coming along? You're learning how to make websites.
The course is great. It's not that difficult. I'm helping my son make a website at home. It's fun.
Great. You'll be able to work on our site soon then.
Sure. What's happening in the other departments? Is someone there working on Saturdays too?
I'm afraid I can't tell you that at the moment. Because they're different departments, I can't say really.
Are there any other courses I can take after the website designer course finishes?
There are one or two that could be useful. Let's talk again about this once you've finished the web course.
OK. You know, Bob, I'd like to ask you something. It's good that you take the time to talk to me about my work and things. But don't you think it'd be a good idea to talk things through together? You know, have a meeting with everyone in our department, see what everybody thinks, all together. If we talk things through together, I think we could come up with some great ideas on how to improve things here.
I agree, Sue. It would be good for everyone to meet together, especially now that we've got so many changes coming along. You know, the problem is that we haven't got a room big enough for us all to meet together, so...
It was just an idea.